Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about something different. The Shadowed Circle, number 7. This is from the Shadowed Circle and Renaissance Arts Press. This was sent to me by the by the editor, the publisher, asking for me to read and review it. Normally, I say no to that sort of request. I don't like the pressure, but I'm a huge fan of the Shadow, so I said yes. And this is the second of two things that they sent me. I've already reviewed the first thing. You would have already seen that if you watch all my reviews. So this is a magazine about the pulp character, the Shadow. For the too long didn't watch crowd, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. And if you watched the other review, I went over a bunch of stuff about the Shadow, and that the other book is called Gangland's Doom: The Shadow of the Pulp's 50th Anniversary Edition, and it is sort of almost a reference book, an encyclopedia about the character the Shadow from the pulp novels. But the Shadow has been in all sorts of media, and this has articles that cover all sorts of different media. It doesn't just talk about the pulp magazine / novels. And I love that cover, and I'm going to show you the back cover eventually, but not at the moment. So, no plot really to talk about. This, as I said, it's just a bunch of articles, and so Will Murray is a very, very prolific author, has written stuff under his own name, but has ghostwritten tons and tons of stuff, including a bunch of original Doc Savage novels, and has written 2 Doc Savage and the Shadow crossovers. And the first article in here is by Will Murray, and it's about the Shadow being called the Knight of Darkness, and how that might have influenced Batman becoming known as the Dark Knight. And then really, really cool article here about Big Little Books. I'm going to show you. All right, there you can see all 3. These were little tiny hardback books that were what do you call it? Not edited, because they were rewritten based on 3 of the original Shadow stories, but rewritten for a younger audience. It's a lot of violence. But so it's not the full story. And what I like about these things, well, I would love to have them, is I don't know if you're familiar with flip books. Do they even still do that anymore? So the books, at least 2 of them, I think, would have little pictures up in the corner, and when you flip, just rifle through the pages, it's animated. You see movement. So that's really cool. Agents of the Shadow from Pulps to Radio is about the characters from the pulp stories that made it to the radio show. And this is where there's Peter Boyle. They used him from the movie, the Alec Baldwin Shadow movie. But he plays a character that's pulps to the radio. Some name changes with that character. But again, for me, for a Shadow fan, I find this very interesting. Why they necessarily chose the characters to bring over to the radio show, or vice versa, because I believe Margot Lane originated on the radio show and then ended up in the novels. Why they made changes to the characters. The Shadow's Chance is about the Shadow giving redemption to certain characters, or allowing certain characters a chance at redemption. So it goes over a number of different characters from a bunch of the different novels where it's a criminal or someone who's about to become a criminal, and the Shadow's going to give them another chance. The Shadow, very violent vigilante, spitting death from his 45s all the time, and yet willing to give some people a second chance to be better. The Comic Book Encounters, The Shadow and Doc Savage. This is part 2. And it basically talks about a Dark Horse miniseries of The Shadow and Doc Savage. Goes over the story. I haven't read part 1. The Language of the Dead, a Lost Shadow radio adventure. Tells us all about exactly what it says. One of the radio shows, they got this information for this article from a script, but apparently, at least as of this publishing time, no existing copy of the radio show itself. The Blur of Inspiration is about a character in one of the Shadow novels, or a device in one of the Shadow novels that may or may not be inspired by a true scientific thing. I'm trying to avoid spoilers, even though these are articles. Shadow and Substance by Dick Myers. This is part 3, and this says just Dick Myers was a lifelong pulp collector who read and purchased pulps off the newsstand when they were new, and he passed away in 2005. And this article was found and is being published posthumously. And the thing I like about this article is it does what the pulps would do occasionally. I don't know if they did it all the time, but it looks at the Shadow as if he were real, and the pulps were fictionalized versions of his real adventures. And that's the kind. This article is written as if the Shadow were real, all of the things were real. They were just fictionalized for people to read, kind of like the dime novels of the Old West, or in Marvel Comics. Steve Rogers. There was a point when Steve Rogers was an artist for Marvel Comics, and if I'm not mistaken, and I may be, but if I'm not, he was the artist on Captain America. Because Marvel Comics published fictional stories about the real superheroes in the Marvel Universe. That's the kind of thing that was going on with the Shadow, some of the other pulps. You know, these are fictionalized versions of real things that happened. That's how this article is written, and I really enjoyed that. And I'm not showing all the great illustrations and stuff. An article about a Sherlock Holmes story, The Speckled Band. And is that the adventure of the Speckled Band? And an episode of the Shadow radio show, and how they're incredibly similar. And it's amazing how the adventure of the Speckled Band was produced as a radio show, like, I don't remember the exact number, but 3, 4, 5 times. And the Shadow adventure, I think, was produced a couple of times. And then there's this interesting article that's a follow-up to an earlier article about the Shadow being published in Canada. And in 1940, the Canadian government passed the Wartime Exchange Conservation Act, banning the importation of non-essential goods into the country. So, couldn't import the Shadow magazine, a bunch of other stuff. But they found a way to print it in Canada. And they would use images from other pulp magazines, either a different issue of the Shadow. But this talks about not only taking images from other issues of the Shadow to make a new Shadow cover, but in one particular case, images from a completely different magazine. This is where the back cover comes in. So you can see, this is the Canadian issue of the Shadow. This is obviously this from the US edition. And then this part is obviously this. That's not even the Shadow magazine. And then there's a couple others, Canadian, U.S. Really interesting stuff. Hopefully I didn't spoil what any of these articles say, but I found this all very, very fascinating. As a huge fan of the pulps, as a huge fan of the Shadow, I just dug every word of this. I am going to go to the Shadowed Circle website and get, all of the previous issues and subscribe. I think I have to see how much a subscription is, but I'm absolutely gonna pick up the earlier issues, and then if I don't subscribe, at least buy the new issues as they come out, and I'm gonna watch to see if there's anything else on that, if they do anything else kickstarted, because from what I saw, the hardback edition of the other book I reviewed, Gangland's Doom, came with some really cool stuff if you backed it on Kickstarter. So, yeah. Oh, and there's even, where'd it go? Where'd it go? The Shadowed Circle wants you. We want your art and article submissions. Well, there's a little shadow cartoon that's kind of funny. And so, again, if you're a fan of the Shadow, if you're a fan of pulps, if you're a fan of sort of the history of this sort of thing, then this is fantastic. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The Shadowed Circle number 7. I'm really looking forward to getting the rest of these and reading them, even though I've read some of the multi-part articles out of order. And yeah, I have. If you watched my other review, this is all going to sound a little repetitive. I have 6 or 7 or 8. I don't know exactly how many. I'm just pointing at where they are, of the paperback reprints of the original Shadow stories. I have a bunch of the Shadow comics, not all, but a bunch. I have DC Shadow series number 1 on my wall over there in my comic boxes. There was a mini series that was the Shadow versus Batman, and then a companion mini series that was Batman versus the Shadow. I have both of those in my comic boxes over there. Howard Chaykin, writer and artist that I absolutely love, did a bunch of stuff with the Shadow. Michael Kaluta, amazing artist on the Shadow. And then there was a Shadow series. I don't remember the publisher. Garth Ennis wrote one mini series, or the first 4 or 5, 6 issues, whatever, in a series. And then Victor Gischler, and then another great writer. Been so many good writers doing stuff with the Shadow. He's such an interesting character, and loved the radio show. And this is really my kind of thing. Thank you to Steve Donoso for reaching out, for offering to send these things to me. I mean, yeah, he's doing it to get the word out, and he's definitely going to make some money now, because as I said, I'm going to buy the first 6 issues. Excuse me. But, yeah, if you're a fan of this kind of thing, absolutely check this out. I guess the question for this video is basically the same as the question I did for the previous video for the Gangland's Doom, the Shadow of the Pulps, which is, are you familiar with the Shadow? If so, how? Are you a fan? Don't you care? Any Shadow or even pulp related stuff, let's talk about it in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. And I will have links. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I will have links for the magazine in the description below. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I will have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.